Okay, we are here with Chris Hayhurst. Could you first tell everyone how we met and then say a little about yourself?
Okay. Yeah, we met in 2018. Went to graduate school. Got accepted at the Oslo Conservatory. So did you, in case you didn't know. And I hosted a gathering of sorts for everybody to get acquainted, and it was kind of under the guise of let's do some homework together. And I prepared a bunch of little handouts for Aristotle's The Poetics, and we discussed Oedipus Rex, which was our first reading that was coming up for our text analysis class, and then we got to slowly integrate and know each other before we drove off to Tallahassee for that week in hell. And then we were thrust headlong into confrontation of ourselves over the next 2.5, 3 years. So yeah, a little bit about me. I am the product of a lesbian family system. I never met my father. His name is Mark Kruger. I know that he was incredibly intelligent, with a propensity for and an affinity for physics and mathematics and science. He met my mother in a job that they both worked at. She was his manager and his senior by at least 13 or 14 years. So he's a little bit younger. And my mother was here living with her now partner, Barbara Lear, who at the time was an alcoholic. And my mother decided that she was going to separate from her and told her it was the drinking that was the cause. So they still lived together while my mother was looking for a place. And my mother went out and dated whoever she wanted to. She's bisexual, and nobody was really off the table for her. And she went through a spree of, flings here and there, and got pregnant. And then Barbara cleaned up her act. She kind of stopped drinking, forcefully quit as much as she could because she wanted to salvage the relationship. And then she asked my mother to get back together, and my mother was like, well, I'm with child. And Barb was like, that sucks, but okay, let's do it. And then I was born, and Barb and I really hit it off. My mom kind of became the structure authoritarian of the house, and Barb was like another kid that I'd hang out with, and I didn't receive a lot of discipline, and I was an only child. So if I ever wanted something, my mom said no, I'd go to Barb and be like, what's up? and she'd be like,
You put her in a tough place.
Oh yeah. I wasn't that kid that would scream in a Walmart when I wanted something and then get the thing that I wanted. I never screamed. I had a reason why she should do it, and my reasons made sense. And she was like, okay, like we could do this. Just don't tell your mom. And eventually she gets caught because I came home with a bunch of shit that we didn't need. But it was a good system. I got what I wanted, and I got I also got some structure and discipline from my mom, but not enough. That's one of the things I missed out on in my youth, was structure and discipline. I didn't spend a lot of time thinking about the other, or the principle of sometimes you just don't get what you want because life is not fair and there are other people that exist. Didn't learn that lesson.
That's okay.
Could you ask that question again?
Yeah, no, what are some structures of discipline that you think is a structure of discipline that you wish you had when you were younger?
Yeah. Well, having siblings would have integrated a different learned behavior. I feel like it would be easier for me to see another person's needs. It would be easier for me to see outside of myself. When I was a kid, if I wanted something, I would usually get it. But if I had a brother or a sister, that person would also have wants and needs. And when there's a finite amount of income that comes into a family system, there's only so much to go around. But instead, I got everything. And so I didn't have to make sacrifices at an early age, and then later, when, like if a sibling would have demanded that sacrifice of me by their need and necessity, I would have had to give that up, and I would have learned that lesson of like, well, tough. Billy needs something too, and that's how this world works. I didn't learn that.
So what were the things that you think you learned in place of that?
You say something in as many ways as you possibly can, and eventually one of the ways that you say it will work. You can get away with anything. You can absolutely get what you want. You just have to be smart enough. You just have to be quick enough. You just have to say the right thing. You have to negotiate the right deal. Compensation's important. If you're getting something from somebody, you give to that person too. Because if you don't, the nature of a taker will overtake you. And they'll unconsciously resent you for taking so much from them. Not everybody wants to operate under the system of quid pro quo. In fact, some people find that to be distasteful. And let's just let it be free and flow freely for everybody. And why can't we all just like give when you give, and some days are your days and some days are my days, and it just happens that way. But I find that without a delineated structure, then eventually those people get taken advantage of. Being taken advantage of is probably one of my greater fears.
What do you think it is about being taken advantage of that scares you, and where do you think that comes from?
Oh, yeah, totally. I've always noticed that I'm different from other people. I didn't quite put my finger on it until I was older and had gone through some therapy. But I'm intense. I carry a certain type of energy. I think in different ways than most people. My therapist and my girlfriend, they liked to try and elevate me by telling me that I'm on a different playing field than most people are. But I have an aberration I find it abhorrent that arrogance could be how I lift myself up. I don't like that. Because it's been one of the tools that I've used, intellectual vanity, talent superiority, to separate myself from other people for fear of being hurt. I think that being taken advantage of has been a theme in my life. Because I was so different from people growing up. But I had the same primal needs. I still had crushes on girls, but I didn't fit in. I didn't quite fit the mold. If I was enjoyed for my antics, it would cap at that. It wouldn't be that people understood me. It wouldn't be that people let me in. And so I think I caused trouble to get attention and to be accepted when I was a kid. But I wasn't accepted. I mean, like, I'd have my test done before anybody else. And I'd be like running up and down the aisles while everybody else is taking a test, and it's quiet time in like 3rd grade. And I'm like, my answers are done. And I'm like, hey, what are we doing at recess? You guys want to play like kickball? Or do you guys want to go and like run out to the field and look for bugs? And they'd be like, dude, like math, you know? and then like the teacher, who Miss Hudson or Miss Salazar, or, you know, whoever the hell, those were both teachers of mine. They'd be like, Chris Hayhurst, get back into your seat. What are you doing? And I would just be like, oh, I'm sorry, you know, like, but like, I was so quick and so intelligent. I was in the top 2% in the nation, top 3% of the world. And
Top 3% of the
testing.
world
In testing,
wow.
not just standardized testing, but testing in general for IQ when I was a child. Like I was a prized commodity for any private school.
Do you remember what your score was? Your IQ score?
No, I don't remember that. And in fact, I prefer not to know, because if it's too high, I'm going to get a big head about it. If it's too low, I'm going to be disappointed in myself. It would have to be just right. And even then, I probably would want it to be higher. So it's best for me not to know.
So getting back to the idea of getting taken advantage of, is there a story in your life?
Several.
Could you share one?
Yeah, I got two of them. I got two of them on deck. One, they both involve women. One, what the hell's my drink?
Yeah.
I was in middle school. I had just moved. So I got kicked out of elementary school, which reinforced the narrative that there was something wrong with me. I already knew there was something wrong with me because I cried a lot more than all the other kids did. I didn't quite know what that meant. I can circle back to that later. So the notion of something wrong with me rather than I'm experiencing something, didn't make that delineation until recently, actually. So my narrative, keep in mind, through all of this, was there's something wrong with me. It's been reinforced since my youth. I've been othered a lot. And so I moved after I got kicked out to a different neighborhood because the one that I was living in required me to get the hell out of there and go to. My mom filed for an inter-district transfer so that I could use my Aunt Rhonda's address as my address, so that I wouldn't have to go to this middle school because kids were getting killed in middle school from gang violence, and the high school was even worse. I remember two stories. One was that a kid was tied naked up in a tree and died from exposure. And another one was that another kid was tied and found naked in a statue in a cemetery that cradles a book. They took the book out and put the kid in its arms.
Did these events traumatize you?
I didn't see them. They were not part of my purview. I moving too fast as an ADHD kid to really pay attention to that kind of story. But I do remember them still at 35. Mm-hmm. Anyway, the neighborhood that I lived in was not the greatest. So my mom was like, oh, fuck that, we're getting you out of here. So they sold the house and they moved me to like a rich white conservative neighborhood. Where I was primarily living was not affluent, let's put it that way. I was living in a Hispanic ghetto, and the only other white people that were living in that area were also not so fortunate. My best friend, let's put it this way, my best friend's dad sold meth, and he lived on the corner, and his name was Chuck, and I lived with Chuck. I hung out with Chuck all the time. So that was my neighborhood growing up, and then I moved to a rich white affluent neighborhood, and ended up in middle school with a bunch of kids, and I had all sorts of problems: Tourette's, OCD, ADHD. I mean, like, I was known as the booger kid because I sniffed my nose so much. People thought that I ate my boogers, and it went around school that I ate my boogers. I had a crush on this girl. No names, just in case they see it. Ever. And I wanted to be with the cool kids. I kind of wore the same black trench coat jacket that I got when I was like 10 or 11. from a Canada road trip with my parents. And I wore it and I sat by the Eagle mural and traded Pokemon cards and was a nerd. Or played chess. And I was not popular. You know. And I liked this girl. She was really pretty. Didn't want to have anything to do with me. Finally asked her to dance at one of the dances, and she danced, and then I heard her walk over to her friends and say to them, "Ew, I touched him." And that impacted me. And then I got, I had a crush on another girl after that hurt for about a year. And then I was talking to this girl, and she was really kind to me. And the other guys all tricked me into thinking that she was waiting for me to ask her out. And so I did. And got turned down in front of all the popular kids, and they all laughed at me. And I was learning that I am othered. I am different. I am not of the ilk, of the accepted. So I started separating, using the tools that I could. Talent, intellectual vanity, in like 7th grade. And then my other unpopular friend, Will Apfel, whose mother was into some, she was a surrogate mom for a lot of people, pumping out babies like a factory. I hung out with him, and he was like, "Hey dude, you should fucking come do some theater with me." And I was like, "What?" And he's like, "Yeah, you should come do this theater thing with me." So I auditioned for a musical called Bugsy Malone.
How old were you when this happened?
12 or 13.
Like middle school?
Yeah, 7th grade. And I auditioned for it, and I hated it. I was like, "This is the stupidest shit," and I left in the middle of the audition. And because they didn't have any boys, they called me on at my house. They called me. They were like, "Please, come to the callback." And I was embarrassed. I couldn't dance. I couldn't sing. I was like, I'm out of here. My ego just was too fragile, and I left. Then I came back, and they cast me as a bunch of different things, little bit parts, you know. But I got the British News Reporter, and I fucking nailed that shit. Like, I crushed it so hard that people were like, "Wow, he's not from Europe." When they would come and talk to us after the show, it was part of the school's program. And I was like, okay, I'm finally good at something. Because we tried all the sports in the world, and none of them took. When I'm playing soccer, I'd be down at the other goalpost, talking to the goalie of the other team, just hanging out, picking flowers, and like I knew the person from school. I'd be like, "Hey man, what's going on with you?" Like socialite, but like not in the game, you know? I was there for like sitting on the bench and eating the oranges, until I was in theater, and then when I got in theater, I was finally being told by authority, by people outside of me that were peers, that were my age, people in the categories of the groups that had rejected me my whole life. I was finally being told, "Wow, you're good." What does that do to a kid? You know, an adolescent who's struggling to figure out where he fits in the social hierarchy. He knows where he fits in the intellectual hierarchy. He's aware. He's not an idiot. And I exploded. I got deep into it. Graduated middle school. Went into high school, same town. Some of the same people. We got split off into 3 different high schools. I got more risky with my performances, and I got better quickly. And it wasn't long before I was the lead of every show. And
So like during this time, did you know that you wanted to be an actor? Or were there other things on the radar at that point?
nothing was on the radar. Nothing. Before acting was, I had an interest in bugs. I wanted to be an entomologist.
Cool.
And then after Jurassic Park, I wanted to be an archaeologist. And then acting. Acting fucking came out of nowhere and grabbed me.
But even during that time, it wasn't like on the radar that was the kind of thing. It was just something that you loved doing at the time.
Yeah, I've always had a kind of a divorced relationship with the idea of prosperity and fame. Yeah, it's always seemed like an unattainable thing. And that's because my relationship to success and failure is it's structured oddly. I am afraid of success, but I'm also equally afraid of failure. And so I'm stuck in this weird middle ground place where I never really try too hard. My therapist is always telling me, like, Chris, I wonder what it would look like if you gave 100%. All right, let me put it this way. This guy will tell me the things that you can't say about yourself out loud to people. You just can't say them because they'll think you're, really messed up. A narcissist. He'll tell me, like, dude, like 93% of the people on the planet, they'll try hard at something that you can give an eighth of your energy to and you'll still be better. Straight up telling me things like that. He says, you are in the top 3%. You are, even today. And he's telling me, like, I wonder what it would look like if Chris Hayhurst gave 100% of his effort.
So where does that stand with you right now? Where are you with that?
I run away from it, man. I'm blocked. This is where I'm deficient as a person. I run away from putting all of myself into it, because if I fail, I can say, well, I never really tried, So only recently have I started to give more and more and more and more and more of myself. Look at that shit right there. It says course readings. I've never been this organized in my life. I have skated and skipped and cheated and fucking just half-assed or third-assed my way through school my entire life. I've not had any interest in any of the academics. I've never been interested in history. I've never been interested in reading. I have a reading disorder. I don't know what the fuck it's called, but I stumble over things, even today. And so I've shied away from it. And that's all because my ego was weak when I was younger. I didn't have a sense of uplifted individuality. It wasn't bestowed by my family of origin upon me that I am good enough as I am. If it was, I wouldn't be susceptible to the narrative that I'm not.
So of the things that we've talked about so far, what are some lessons that you think you've learned through, I mean, we talked a lot about your high school experience and getting into acting, and also right now with your feeling of deficiency of committing 100% to stuff. What are the lessons that you've learned, and what's some advice or thoughts that you'd want to give to people who maybe...
Are we ending in our interview soon?
No.
No? Okay.
No. Well,
so
I'm wanting to get little
nuggets
chunks
along the way.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Great. So. Chris, in the current stage of mind, in the current stage of the journey that I'm describing to you, would say that the lessons learned are: don't trust anybody. Don't let anyone in. Everyone has an ulterior motive, and every single thing that a person does means something, whether they're aware of it or not. An eye blink, a twitch of the nose, this when you move to the left or look away. If you move to the right or look away. If you avert eye contact or scratch your forehead. Everything means something. Everything means something. And anyone who says it doesn't is either lying to themselves or lying to you. And so, you pick. Or they're stupid. That's the other third option. They're dumb. They're ignorant to the fact that they do things when they feel things. They're not stupid with the negative connotations attached to it. Remove them. The actual ignorance of not being aware. Not having the knowledge. They're reacting.
So, this is just fascinating, right? Because it's like, if the more that we are aware of certain things that we do, our bodies, our sensations, right? The more we become aware of what they mean, and so, and it compiles, right? The things that we don't just, we continue to become more aware.
Yeah.
For you, where is the boundary of your awareness?
With myself or with other people?
Let's say both. I'm interested with you and yourself. Like, where is the boundary of awareness in yourself versus with other people?
Okay. I am constantly assessing myself. I'm constantly working on myself, and I'm constantly looking at myself. It's impossible to see everything. You need other people to refract and reflect with you to be able to see yourself entirely. And even then, it's very challenging. That's my personal belief. I think that with seeing myself, I see myself more than most people see themselves. I know that I have issues with authority. I know that I can be angry, and my anger overrides my logical perspectives, and I will adopt a negative narrative about a lot of things, and that negative narrative comes from a desire to not be taken advantage of, like before, to not be hurt again. We haven't even gotten in our story to the place of the deepest pain for me. We've gotten the fundamental base, but I was hurt very badly. Well, not badly, bad. And I think that for a long time in my life, for about a decade, I lost sight of myself. I got angry, I got jaded, I got reactive.
Could you talk a little bit about
Yeah.
how you got there?
Yeah, sure. I got into some trouble by making a terrible call about involving myself with people I should not have involved myself with. And those people were less than trustworthy and less than kind. I was accused of terrible things, and then unaccused after evidence surfaced. But by then the damage had been done. It was too late. I thought I was going to go to jail. Hired a lawyer. And then I didn't hear from the parties who were accusing me ever again. And I lost all of my friends. Every single one of them. There were 2 people that still talked to me. All in a matter of 2 days, 3.
What did you learn about friendship at that point?
it is thinly veiled. Your expectations of loyalty and your expectations of what friendship means to you are not often, if at all, parallel with what your friends think of their version of friendship with you. And sometimes you will find yourself in situations where you're forced to discover that. And so in discovering all of that abruptly, I lost all faith and trust in authority. I lost all faith and trust in the common word exchanged between my peers. I lost all faith and trust in my parents. I lost all faith and trust in my extended family. And I lost all faith and trust in women. And I went into a downward spiral. At the beginning of this, I didn't drink, I didn't smoke, and I went to church. After it happened, everything ripped off of me like a mask. And I stopped going to church because I was no longer, how could I show my face? And I started drinking and smoking. And everything hit, the event hit right as I was leaving high school and going into college. So I went to a college. I was surrounded by a bunch of people who didn't know. And so I was able, in that way, I guess I was fortunate enough to be able to reinvent myself. Some people came with me from that school. And they knew at that point that I was innocent. And they had apologized to me in an effort to mend fences. They were like, Chris, dude, we are so sorry. We did not believe you. And I was so angry at them. And then I ended up in this relationship with this girl a couple of years later after I remade some friends. Positivity. Let's fill this with positivity before we go into that. I flourished in the improv scene at this college. I was so good at making people laugh and just saying whatever came to my mind, and I had no filters. I didn't give a shit. I didn't care if I offended anybody. I was in wild abandon for like 2.5, 3 years straight.
A sign of a comedian, right?
Yeah, but
giving a shit. Yeah.
Right, but it eventually turned dark, and I became a dick. And I was a dick, but I got away with it because I was charismatic. And I didn't care. I hated everything, but I didn't see that I hated everything. I was willfully ignoring everything and listening to a lot of music and smoking weed. Reconnected with some people, and not other people. And so
I'd like to, but before we go on to another topic, I'd like to connect this back to the lessons that you've learned about friendship and how they're thinly veiled, and today where you are with your friendships, your deeper friendships that you have.
Sure.
What are the things that have developed through the years to lead you to have the deep friendships that you have now? What are those based off of? What do you mean? Like your friend Cliff.
Yeah.
Right? Like that he is a deep friend.
Yes.
And so what is that friendship based off of?
Oh yeah, okay, great.
You know?
He was there when it all went down. He was at that school with those people. And Cliff's different.
Yeah, how so?
He has one of the highest IQs of anybody that I've ever met. He dwarfs me, and that is exciting for me. And yeah,
I see.
and I mean, like, you can ask this guy about literally anything, and he'll have information, a purview, an established opinion, and he'll be able to just outline the principles of how a combustion engine works to you without Google in front of him. It's fucking remarkable.
So there's something, what I'm reading is that there is fun in sparring partners, and that kind of sparring...
Oh, that definitely came with my buddy James. Well, okay, so around this time, one of the people that I met at the college that I kicked it with was this guy, James Key. Really smart. Fucking too smart for his own good. My crew, all of us, very smart. Didn't hang out with dummies, unless they were giving us weed. Which we did. Which in that case, we hung out with a lot of dummies. And so, yeah, my buddy James had like a connect. His uncle like grew weed, and so he'd just get like fucking like 3 or 4 ounces, and then he'd go around and sell to all these people who liked hanging out with him already. All he'd have to do is just text open-ended texts like, "Sup? What you doing?" Like, to people, right? And they'd be like, "Yo, come through. We'll smoke you out." And he already we'd roll like 3 or 4 blunts in his car, and he didn't have a radio, and he beatboxed, and he taught me how to beatbox. And we just would smoke like 3 or 4 blunts to our dome, driving around to these different places who would smoke us out. And we would sell them weed that they would use to smoke us out with. And it was just like, I was in a daze, man. And my buddy Cliff was James's friend at the college. And so I reconnected with Cliff through James. Mm-hmm. And then it was the 3 of us and this guy named Dre and this other guy named Parker. Excuse me. And then various girlfriends and surrounding peripheral people. But those are my crew. And we'd go back to this back of this coffee shop every single night. And we get fucking ripped as hell. And then go downstairs. And it was like this this bazaar. Oh, without selling goods though. Just like so many different groups. An eclectic group. And an amalgam of Stockton. Which is already a pretty culturally diverse little city. It's pretty cool. It's a little pocket of like everybody. And you'd walk around from table to table, like saying hi to people. What's up, Crystal? How are you doing, Jason? What's going on, man? And like there'd be the guys with the guitars over here, and then there'd be people over here playing theater games, and then you go inside, and there was like chess and checkers, and there was the internet cafe section of the coffee shop, and it was just like this homey place called Java Aroma, and everybody called it Java. Mm-hmm. And we go down there, and we'd be stoned out of our minds, looking around at everybody, and we'd go over to the music people, and we'd jam out with them, you know? And like we'd hang out and like hit styrofoam cups or like smack onto some tables and stuff, and just kind of be like hanging out with these people. And then we'd go over to the theater kids, and we'd be playing the movie game where like you get to name the way it starts is you start with a large movie with a fuck ton of major actors in it, like Con Air or like, you know, Armageddon. And then you throw that title to somebody else. They pick an actor, then the next person picks another movie that actor's been in. No repeats. You go around until you can't. Mm-hmm. And so we played the movie game, or we would go to little parties, and we'd use Java as the hub. And then James would send out his texts, or I'd send out my texts, and with my newly acquired second generation of friends, because since James and Cliff had left the theater department at the college, and I was just still kicking it there because I needed some time to recuperate after all the shit that happened to me, I was in league with the next gen. And so like I was eventually starting to like create parties, and James was creating parties, and my friend Jacob was creating parties, and Cliff was always like, dude, my crazy girlfriend wants to go out to the beach, you guys want to come? So we would we'd always have something to do. Always something to do. And all of these people that that I hung out with, we all had one thing in common. We were all incredibly intelligent. We were all running from ourselves. And it was so fun. It was so fun to run. And it was like bottled lightning. I don't think that I'll ever have that time in my life again. Where I gel so specifically, so well with a core group of people like that. I've not found it again since then. I've been to so many different places, so many different schools, so many different pods of people. Nobody fits like they did. And so it's like those were my guys. James was my friend for 15 years, and then he got married, and he didn't have as much energy for the friendship, and that hurt. And so I also needed to be less than a little buddy or like a little brother, and he was like the older one, and so he was constantly like up here when I was down here, but not because of my lack of ability or my intelligence. It was just, that's the nature of the dynamic. He found me when I was weak, and he was strong and helped me. And then when I started to want to change that dynamic, he was like, whoa, I don't have any time or energy for that. And pulled away. Because I was starting to openly critique him and be like, yo, dude, stop doing that. You can do better. Or like, hey man, treat me with more respect. And that was a residual effect of my therapy. My therapy was starting to teach me to respect myself and to recover from my trauma, to start to believe in myself again, to start to think positively about Chris Hayhurst. When I started therapy, I couldn't even look in my therapist's eyes. I had to look away. Yeah, and so when I became, quote unquote, whatever you might want to call healthy, than I was, James and I separated. He recently hit me up though, in the past like 6 months, and he was like, "What's up, man?" I was like, "Dude, not shit. What's going on with you?" You know, and so we're starting to reconnect. But Cliff, ever since we reintegrated after high school, has stuck with me the entire time when we've grown together. And now he owns a ranch out in Gulp, and he farms, and I'll go out there and I'll like help him kill cattle, or like work the land for him, or like we'll chop down trees and process the wood, or we'll sell things, or prep. He makes all sorts of jellies and jams out of the food that he grows, and now we're raising chickens, and we're gonna slaughter some hogs when I move back.
So what? So now that was. It sounds like a snippet of the 20s, early 30s.
Yeah, that's what it was. It was the early 20s into mid 20s into early 30s. It was all over the place.
It was intended to be from early 20s to mid 20s, and then continued on.
Yeah.
20s and maybe 30s.
I'm leaving a lot out, dude. I'm leaving a lot out.
Oh yeah, of course. Yeah. I mean, you're a human being who's lived 35 years of life.
Yeah.
You have tons of experience.
I've traveled too. I've done some shit.
So with now, in this part of your development, acting grad school, like what has that been? What has that experience been for you? What has this experience been for you?
In order to tell you that, first I'm going to say it so that I don't forget it. Mm-hmm. Expanding myself and letting a lot of things go and learning that I don't have all the answers. That.
So that was before this. That was all before. Or
no, that's this.
That's where you are now.
Yes.
Okay.
Now rewind to the first point when I started to notice that I had critical problems in the style of thinking that I have, and my emotional reactivity and what causes me to react. And then that caused me to shine light on my family of origin to find out where I got those components. My folks. And so or my folks not giving me certain things that they didn't even know that I needed. Like, for instance, having a man around. My father figure was my grandfather, and he died when I was 12 or 13. So it's like my dad died when I'm 12 or 13 too. Right in the beginning of adolescence. And so...
Right when you did your first play.
Yeah. Actually, right around then. And so yeah, it's 2015. After a slew, let's rewind a little bit further back because we went off topic when I was prefacing for something. The thing I was prefacing for was how did I get taken advantage of for the second story. Right. The second story was I dated a girl after all of that stuff happened that cheated on me for the entire duration of our relationship, and I had no idea. I felt it. I felt it, but I didn't have any confirmation. And then her gay friend told me. We had never had sex in that entire relationship. We did. I was waiting because I was damaged and hurting and didn't want to. And yeah, she cheated on me the whole time. And then her friend told me, and I brought it to her. I dumped her, and I was like, "Fuck you, I'm out." And then later we talked about it, and she was like, "Yeah, I was. I'm sorry." So I got confirmation from her mouth. And so I don't like letting people take advantage of me. It's a thing where I don't like to be fooled. Fool me once, shame on me. The buck stops there. You know what I mean? And so, fool me once, shame on you. But essentially, what I said was correct.
Yeah. I think, we understand.
Yeah. But the point being is, okay, so
one strike.
Yeah, exactly. Now I've been fucking struck so many times that everybody gets one. And so, 2015. That was 2007. Fast forward. I've had sex with a ridiculous amount of people until that point. And it was not a positive experience. It was me searching. It was me trying to figure out why I wasn't good enough. That was messed up. And I started therapy in 2011. First 2 or 3 years it was a rocky road. I started to feel better about myself around 2014-ish. I started noticing my mom had signs of dementia in 2014. I can tell because...
Do you want to bring Rumple in here, maybe?
I don't know what he wants.
It could be like a nice...
Do you want it in here, buddy?
Guest star?
Yeah, maybe.
Yeah.
Right. This is my dumbass cat. So 2014, I started noticing my mom had signs of dementia. And I got a DUI. I got caught at a checkpoint. I wasn't even being reckless. I got to put it into perspective. I got caught with .08 as my BAC.
And what is it supposed to be?
.04s are wet and reckless. .08 is the limit. And so I got caught. I got tagged. I got brought into jail. And they take your shoelaces. They take your shoes. They give you your shoes back. And yeah.
The shoelaces off. Right.
Yeah, I had done the right thing. I sat and I waited for 3.5 hours after I day drank, and then I ate food at IHOP and was hanging out with my friends, sobering up, and then I was gonna drive home at the end of the night. I got tagged at 11:08 p.m. on April 24th of 2014. I know this because I will never forget it. I went and I did community service in lieu of a fine, and so what I did was I dug graves. And edged graves at a graveyard. Kind of a cool job. I liked it.
Yeah.
Yeah, there was something really...
The reason you like 6 Feet Under.
Yeah. No, I actually liked 6 Feet Under before that, but yes. Maybe
that's the reason you chose that one.
Yeah. I was either that or clean graffiti off of Caltrans. Fuck that.
Yeah.
So yeah, I did that for a little while. And then once that was over, I started to really kind of accept, okay, I need to check myself. I don't think I have a drinking problem, but I think there's something there's something going on with me that is causing me to want to escape. Yeah, because I didn't drink every day, and I didn't even drink every week. Hey, buddy. And then I met a girl. I went out to, I called my buddy Jacob, because he was going to be in a show. And I was like, yo, dude, like, you're in a show right now? Can I come see it? And he was like, yeah. So I came out and saw it. I met a girl there. And I fell immediately for this girl's energy. It was crazy. I was just like, and she reflected with me and refracted with me in a way that was just like, it was polarizing for the room. Nobody in the room could escape what we were feeling. Like, it was nuts. Super intense. And it was either all in or all out, and we were all in. And we texted every day, all day for like 2 weeks. And then she came and stayed with me for 3 or 4 days. Drove 3.5 hours to stay with me. And then I drove 3.5 hours to stay with her. And it was awesome. I finally found somebody who liked me for who I was and accepted me and in fact adored me. Thought I was just the fucking coolest thing that she'd ever seen in her life. And never got tired of telling me about it. And over the course of that relationship, shit deteriorated. It was abusive. I was becoming an angry person again. I was ripping into her and she was ripping into me, and nothing I ever did was enough. And she was aggressively putting me in a position where I constantly had to solve her problems. And no solution that I came up with would ever be enough. And then she would frame it in such a way where I was the reason that the thing was wrong in the first place. And other people would believe it because she's so good at playing the victim. Remarkable at it. And I'm not an idiot. But like, that should give you perspective on how emotionally intelligent this person was. Not smart, but intelligent. She had she and knowledgeable. But she didn't make good choices.
Emotional instinct. That
Yes,
was
absolutely.
Fast.
She didn't make exactly, and she didn't make good choices though. She hurt people a lot, and the more that I discovered her peripheral friends and how they viewed her out behind her back, the more I realized that something was wrong. And my therapist was in the background like, "Yo, dude, red flags. Yo, dude, get out. Yo, dude."
Was this in Chicago? Is that what this was?
Well, we're getting there. So before we get to Chicago, I met her and she was living in Pacific Conservatory of Performing Arts in Santa Maria. And I was living in Fullerton, California, 3.5 hours apart. She decides that she's going to move back up to Napa Valley or Santa Lena area to raise money to move to Chicago. That was her plan before she met me. My plan before I met her was to move back up to California, save some money, and move to Washington, D.C. to live with my buddy Patrick. And then after I was going to live with my buddy, I was going to get my own spot and get involved in this theater scene there. And we met each other and we collided. And then she went up to Napa and I went up to California to save money. And there was a period of my life where I was putting 860 miles a week on my truck, driving to. I lived in Stockton. Over here is Modesto. It's an hour away. Over here is Sonora. It's an hour and 20 minutes away. Reminder, here's Stockton. Here's Pleasanton, where I worked for the Cheesecake Factory, which was about 45 minutes to an hour away. And so, yeah. And then the reason I did that is because I worked down here in LA at the Cheesecake Factory and used it to transfer up and have a job during a time when jobs were scarce. And so I would drive to the Cheesecake Factory and then drive to Modesto to do a rehearsal for a play and then drive back home to sleep at night. And then repeat that on Thursday, Friday, Saturday, and Sundays. Every other Monday and Friday, Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I would drive up to Napa, an hour and 20 minutes away, and stay with her with the money that I made from the Cheesecake Factory, I'd buy us groceries and we just live in her parents' house by ourselves. Because her parents lived in a different neighborhood in Rockland, California, which is miles away. And so we were using her Napa Valley house to just live. Mm. And this place was a pigsty. I mean, holes in the walls, everything was all fucked up, the electrical and plumbing were messed up. And so I started to fix that place. But I was learning from a guy over here. Like I said, every other Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, I would go over to this guy's house, and he was a house painter out in Sonora, and he taught me how to basic repair everything. So he was teaching me what to do at her house, and I was driving in this section over and over and over again. I'm talking 860 miles on my truck a week, easy. Like I was living out of that thing, and I was saving money. I was saving a shit ton of money, and I was throwing it away in my bank account to get ready to move. I saved up like $3,000 or $4,000, and then by the end of that summer, we romantically and it was just so affectionate, said goodbye to each other through a camping trip that we did together, and then we parted ways. And she went to Chicago, and I went to Napa, and I went to DC, and we didn't talk for like a while, and then we started talking again, and I just could not be around her, and I quit my journey in DC, grabbed all my shit, packed it up, moved it to Chicago, got a new place, restarted with her, and then 4 months later I dumped her because she grabbed me around the neck in the back of a theater department, no venue space, and was like, and I was like, I pushed her, and I was like, whoa, because I can't hit her, I'm a guy, but she was hurting me, and I had to get her to stop, so I pushed her off me, and I said to her, if you do that again, I'll fucking kill you. And when I said that to her, I realized I was becoming a different person. I was not me. This was not okay. This was not healthy. And the next week I took her out to the beach after I told her that I needed some space and some time to think. And I talked to a couple of peripheral people that knew her, and they were like, this guy told me that, you know, she dated somebody in our conservatory before she moved out to Chicago, and I've never seen a person destroy another person so horribly than what she did to him. And I was like, whoa. And my therapist had been saying it the whole time. I just wasn't ready to see it because it was the first person that liked me back for me. And I just put up with it. And I was becoming a bad person too. I was starting to give her ultimatums. I was starting to be aggressive and say mean things to her. I was starting to tell her that, you know, call her names. I was becoming verbally abusive. And when I pushed her that one time, I was like, whoa, this has to stop. So I talked to a bunch of people, and they were like, yo, dude, get out. I was like, yep. So my friend accidentally lets it break to her at a party that I'm going to break up with her, and she freaks out and flips out on everybody there, loses all the friends that I had introduced her to. And I took her out to the beach, which was her favorite spot, and I broke up with her. Told her I had some things to work on, and that I wasn't ready for a relationship, and I'm so sorry. I've made a lot of mistakes. And then my buddy. So.
Yeah.
What's up? Go ahead.
Well, yeah, I was going to ask, did that then start the longest section of your life where you were single?
No. The longest section was between 2007 or 8 and then. So, but here's where shit gets crazy. Unless you got somewhere you want to go with it.
No. I was just wondering.
Okay, so I spiral again, and I start drinking. I'm talking drinking to be social. So, like, I'm going to bars every single night, I'm working at the Cheesecake Factory and then I'm going out with them, or I'm going to bars in my neighborhood, in Andersonville and Uptown area in Chicago. And I met some people there at the bar, and I'm just like, going there every night and drinking and trying to hook up with people. I slept with, 9 girls in like 6 or 7 months?
That's when you traveled the country, right?
No.
Oh.
No. That's later. Yeah, I used.
Yes.
I think that one of the major lessons that I've learned is that I was using sex to try to solve an intimacy and vulnerability problem that could only be solved through relationship. And I was trying to get it through sex, but that's because I was so afraid that the relationship would hurt me, because I've had ample amounts of reasons to believe that. And like 3 or 4 really big ones. And so I was trained, so to speak, that relationships were dangerous. Intimacy and vulnerability were dangerous. But I learned that from my parents being withholding of certain types of intimacy and vulnerability with me on accident, that they weren't even aware that they were withholding on certain things. So I associated that withholding with love. And then I'd find other women who withheld. And I would vie for their attention. And I'd become involved with them.
Cycle.
Yeah, and it just keeps happening and happening and happening and happening. And the cycle doesn't stop unless you start asking different questions.
Yeah, so then what ended up happening?
Well, I started
transitioning from...
Yeah, I gotcha. So I was drinking a lot. And I passed out in the snow, and I woke up at 4 in the morning. I was like, oh my God, I could have died. I'm done. I'm done with this. And I started, got my act together. I enrolled in theater again. I auditioned for a show, and I got cast, and I was getting paid for it in Chicago. And then I met this Bulgarian girl. I was dating her, and she was like a relationship for like 3 or 4 months. And it was great. It was fun. It was super lighthearted. She didn't want anything crazy serious, but she also wasn't incredibly abusive. She had just gotten out of a 7-year marriage, and she was looking for something lighthearted. Someone to drink wine and cook dinners with, And I was that guy. And so I stopped sleeping around. Hung out with her. And while I was hanging out with her, and she was like, you can do better than this. You're smarter than this. Why are you working at the Cheesecake Factory? Let's get you a better job. And I was just so depressed that I didn't want to try. But she was like, no, I got you. Come on. And she was making like 6 figures. Killing it. Living in the financial district. And, but she liked me. She found value in me, and she wanted to raise me up. And I saw that. I was like, oh, well, I'm not ready for this right now. I just got out of something that hurt me. And I think that it was an inopportune time. We were a good fit for so many things, but she just got out of a marriage, and I just got out of a messed up relationship. And it was the wrong time to collide. But it was good. We parted as friends. I got a phone call from my buddy Mike, the painter. And he was like, hey, what are you doing? I was like, fucking nothing, hanging around. And he goes, well, why don't you come work for me in California, and I'll pay you $1,000 a week to paint houses. And I was like, sign me up. So I said goodbye to that lovely girl out there in Chicago that was from Bulgaria. And I shipped all my shit back home, hopped on a plane. And I came back to California, and I started working in the woods. And
how long did you work there?
only like what? I got there in January, and I got fired in July. Yeah, first time being fired from a job. No. Check this out. So the guy did not think this through. He offered me all this money because he saw how quickly I learned things, and how quickly I picked up acting, or how dedicated and specific and detail-oriented I was with my craft. And he assumed that I would apply the same kind of vigor and passion to painting. And I was like, well, I'm just not into this. Like, I'm into it for a job, but it's not my vocation. It's not my calling.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was involving myself in the theater scene around that area while working the job. But I was not quick enough on the job. I was not good enough at painting right off the bat. I was okay, but I was not worth what he was paying me. He overshot in paying me. 1. 2, when he overshot in paying me, he didn't have good communication skills to tell me that he overshot in paying me and offer me something less to keep me on or to train me up. He wanted me to learn like 2 or 3 years of experience in like 4 or 5 months. And I was, well, what? No. Like, I would have to just be a natural at painting. And I wasn't. And he was willing to take that kind of gamble. Which is just, 1, that's ignorant. 2, I should have seen the fact that he was in his 50s and still hadn't gotten his painting business off the ground. And he'd been doing it for like 25, 30 years. Problems with his own purview of how to work a situation. He had relationships with failure and success, maybe parallel running to mine.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Probably something that brought you two closer together too.
Perhaps. But he's such a cool dude, like the kind of dude that you'd want around like a campfire.
Yeah.
And like he just has stories and he's got a really cool energy and he's just a fun guy to be around. And like, God, he hurt the hell out of me because he was willing to chuck our friendship away over this. And I was like, I need some space from you and then I'll come back to you. And he's like, okay, take all the time you need. I'm here for you. I went to go back and he wasn't having me. Even just as his friend, I didn't need anything from him. And I come to find out from one of his other peers that he just didn't want to have that conversation with me why he fired me. He felt like it was done. I was like, okay. Good luck. And took off, and eventually, years later, he even defriended me on Facebook. I was like, okay, well, that sucks. He was a friend of like 5 or 6 years before any of that happened. So that sucked. I got fired and lost a friend. In that exact same week of getting fired, that exact same week, my mom formally got dementia, formally got diagnosed. 2017. So I moved back home. I was having a hard go of it. Wasn't spiraling, wasn't drinking, wasn't sleeping around. Just being miserable. So I started doing basement theater again with my friend Tracy. She's got this cool little space. It's guerrilla theater, fucking no budget. The acting is, it's good, and some people are really good. Like the people who are afraid. Is
that where Joe was? Is that?
Yeah.
Okay.
It's where I did True West. This is a mecca. Modesto theater scene is like a mecca for like the people who are so afraid about going out and actually doing this for a career. It's a place for them to stay and feel safe. So you got a whole mixed crowd. It's not like everybody sucks or everybody's good. It's mixed. And there are some good people. And so I did some pretty cool shows there. And I was part of that crew. And I'm proud of it. I'm proud of it because it marks a period of my life where I was afraid to try. And then my friend Tracy was very pivotal in this. She said, you should absolutely go audition for this production of The Glass Menagerie that's happening right now. And I was like, I don't know if I can do this. She goes, you should absolutely do this. She's like, what's the harm in trying? Go and audition. So I drove an hour and a half away and I auditioned for The Glass Menagerie and I got cast on the spot. And it was a professional production.
That was for Jim, right? Is that when you?
I know. I played Jim for her in stage 3 years before and won an Ellie Award for it at a rinky-dink community theater that paid stipends.
That's right.
This one was for Tom.
Yes.
And I got cast, and I played Tom, and I was getting paid money weekly. Equity waiver wages. I'm not getting paid like, an equity actor, but I got a weekly paycheck, and like I got exposure, and I got my first equity points, and then I got more points after that from the same company I played in Midsummer Night's Dream with them, And so after I saw that I could do it, after I saw like my relationship to failure and success, the bubble just started like cracking and changing shape and shit. And like I started to realize, oh man, you are way better than you think you are. You are not in the right bracket. You're not allowing yourself to be in the right bracket. And she said, you should go for grad school. And then she was one of 2 or 3 people. Mark Ramont, another professor of mine, drove all the way out of his way to see Glass Menagerie. Miles out of his way to see Glass Menagerie. 370 miles.
A few miles. 370 miles.
I'm telling you,
Yeah,
he was in Orange County and he came up to see his friend in San Francisco and then drive over here to see my show. Fucking grip of time on the road. And he saw my show and he said, you belong on a different stage. And that was at the professional stage. He was like, this is summer stock. This is musical theater. This is fun. This is not you. And he told me about grad school. He said, go, run the circuit, and then when you get tired and feel like you hit a wall, go to grad school. Mm-hmm. And I was like, okay. And he
That's
mentioned
good advice. That's good advice.
Right, yeah. Right. And he mentioned the Oslo. He said the Oslo would be what I needed. And I was like, what? The Oslo.
So when you auditioned, did you just audition for Oslo, or was it?
I auditioned for UCSD. I auditioned for NYU. I auditioned for Yale. I auditioned for a lot of places. I auditioned for those 3, and then I auditioned. And then I auditioned for the Ernest. Mm-hmm. So I ate shit my first day. Kenny, when I tell you I ate shit, let me just. Like, no, I was so devastated. My nerves got to me.
Was this Erda?
Yeah. This is no. This is no. So I did UCSD first. Ugh. I fucking crash and burned. And then I did Yale next. Didn't even make first cut. Yeah, right. And then and I know people who went to Yale. They're all right. Like, I know some people that are good that went to Yale, and I know some people that went to Yale that are just like, okay, you know? But they look a certain way. They look like they could be sold right now in today's market. Like, I can sell this person to this network, I can sell this person to this network, I can sell this person to this network. It's like, you know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And so, I don't fit the aesthetic right now. But so something pretty cool that I'm proud of, even though it didn't pan out. I made the first cut of Tish. I was in the second cut that I got cut, which is still kind of cool.
Oh, I mean, yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, they call back like 1 out of 10, maybe.
Yeah,
for
maybe.
A callback for the second callback.
Maybe.
I mean,
probably less than that.
I mean, it's 10%.
Yeah.
You know. Yeah.
So I felt very positive about that, and then I went home that day like just devastated. I was like, fuck, am I supposed to be even doing this? Is this my thing? Am I an actor or am I a performer? Am I a performer that I say the funny, snazzy, fun thing and do the musical theater wink nod and a bunch of shticks and gimmicks and I'm a puppet for the director to shove his hand up my ass and manipulate my mouth? Yeah, exactly. Or am I an actor, an artist, someone with creative spirit, someone that is not compromised by any scenario, but the scenario feeds? And I called my friend Patrick in a fucking panic, and he was just like, calm down. You're overthinking this like you do with everything, Chris. Go have a stiff drink and go to bed by 7. And I did. And I woke up the next morning at like 3 or 4 in the morning because I went to bed at 7 and I was nervous. And so I got up at 3 or 4 in the morning and my audition wasn't until like 9. and it was my Erda's audition. And so I went.
Oh, I'm getting butterflies just thinking about it.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so I went, and this was my last shot. And otherwise I was going to go back home and sit with my dementia-ridden mother and try to come up with a different plan. I didn't have a plan B. And so I ran my pieces. I had a good breakfast at Blue Jay Cafe, San Francisco. If you're there, you should check it out. And then I went and I waited in line. And in the cattle call room, there's like 30, 40 people per time slot. Excuse me. And they ripped through them. There was like 20-something schools there. Like 13 graduate schools and then a bunch of satellite schools. And then some like non-MFA programs. Just like certificate schools. Like Stella Adler. And I went up and I was about to go on for my monologues, and I was rocking a Stupid Fucking Bird compilation monologue that I wrote that I compiled myself. And then I was rocking the Edmund speech from King Lear, Thou Nature art my goddess, which I didn't know was on the no-no list that everybody was fucking doing, and that people were tired of hearing it, that it was almost as bad as To Be or Not to Be. And so I didn't know this until the guy right before me did my speech in Erda's. Did it. Almost the same cut of my speech too. And then I went on and I fucking killed it anyway. I killed it. At the end of my Stupid Fucking Bird monologue, people were laughing. The auditors were laughing. And I was like, thank you. And somebody from the back was like, no, thank you. And I was like, yeah!
That doesn't happen.
It doesn't. And then we got our movement call back, and that was fun because it was like a committee of Dollar Troop that came in and were kind of scoping us for our attitudes when they put us in positions that were intentionally purposed for us to fail. And they were gauging, our demeanor. And also, can they move? Mm-hmm. And so I made it through that. And then they hand you at the Erdas, I don't know if you did Erdas or if you auditioned personally, but they hand you that fucking paper folded in half with your callback list, and everybody else like watching you like,
how many does he have?
Then what happened? And I opened it, and my shit was like tri-folded. I had gotten called back to every graduate school, every single one, and all of the satellite schools. There were like something like 20-something callbacks on my list. And they were macromanaged down to a 15-minute increment, and I was busy all day. And people were looking at me like, I hands down got the most out of the entire like 200 or 300 person thing. And I was like, oh my God. The previous day I was like ripping my testicles out and screaming to the heavens, and why did you give me this? It was a horrible experience the previous day, and I ate shit. And then the next day, wish I could have done that for fucking Tisch or like Yale, but like the theater gods or karma, the universe, aliens, whatever you want to call it, came to my rescue in the days of the Erdas, and I nailed it. And then had a series of interviews, and I had 3 or 4 schools that were interested in me after the interviews and the callbacks. This is the callbacks. And then I blew it with a couple of them because I just was like didn't care about them. I looked at their program and they were like, send us a video, a personalized video, and you can edit it if you like. And I just like turned on the camera in my car and started talking to them, and then I just turned it off and sent it.
Wow.
And even one of the guys responded, he was like, wow, wearing your seatbelt, it's bold. And then I never heard from them again. So I totally ruined it for like 3 of them. So there was like 4 or 5 schools that were interested. I sabotaged myself down to 2. And the 2 that remained were West Virginia and the Oslo. And Greg called me and said that there's somebody in line before me. I was a second pick from Greg. And that he had to let me know. And he said, but I think this other person's going to go somewhere else. And I was like, well, that makes me feel great. Thanks. Like, what? I guess they had like too many medium build white men. And so he had to let me know. In the meantime, I was the top pick for West Virginia. I was the first person that guy called. And that, I don't regret not going there, but I feel bad about not going there. Because that guy wanted me. He saw something in me. And I feel bad about betraying that. Still. 3 years later. Dude, like, felt like Dumbledore. Felt like him. Like his energy radiated out, and it was not purposeful. He wasn't putting a show on. You could just see that he was wise in his studying. And it was just like, oh my God. I traded that for Greg Lemming.
I had a similar situation with a guy from Georgia. Just like him and his wife were there, and they just had like such grounded energy.
Yeah.
You know, it was like, yeah, do you follow that, or did you have Andre in the?
Yeah, it was Andre and it was Greg.
Did you enjoy the Andre?
The Andre callback? Yeah, I was nervous. I mean, I didn't know what the fuck these people were. And
you had like this Russian guy in a hotel room with you.
Yeah, and I went up on lines a couple of times while I was doing it, and then he said, "It's okay. All I need you to do is just listen to the room." I was like, "What?" He's like, "Yeah, maybe the air vent is making sounds that will affect you. Maybe this humming from the refrigerator is going to impact you." I was like, So I did a glass menagerie monologue, big no-no, but I loved that monologue, so I said fuck it, and it was a backup. It was not like my core package. It was one of my 4 backups that I had, and I did it, and in the middle of talking to my mother, I started weeping in front of Andre and in front of Greg, and Greg was like. And then he proceeded to try to talk me out of going, pointing out all the things that could potentially interfere with me going. And I just refuted and knocked him out of the way, and refuted him and knocked him out of the way in the most polite way possible. And then I got the offer from West Virginia, and I held out. I almost took it because they were offering me, we got a $9,200 stipend from this place. I was going to get like $13,000 or $14,000. And also full ride. And it was like, and I'd be living in a way cooler college town with an actual season, and with a much kinder faculty. I could just tell that they were warmer and connected and a family. And instead of doing 1 year and then the next year and then the next year, like a 3-year tier, it was one set of 6 people every 3 years.
Crazy.
I would have gotten so much private attention and detail. But what I wouldn't have gotten was the sensation of there are other people around me that have needs too. That I lack compassion in certain areas. That my willingness to be empathetic has been tainted by my need to preserve myself. And that the balance is incorrect.
So what has this grad school experience been for you? Like, what was the expectation?
Man, when I first got here, I was riding on high, and I separate through arrogance, but it's not how I truly feel about myself. I fear myself, and I fear my ability, and I fear my inability, and I put up a front of protection. It's like a circle of protection spell that I put over the top of myself. And that comes off as intellectual vanity and narcissism. And I refute and refuse, and I'm superb at deconstructing things. An event, a teaching style, a person. I'm good at it. And it's very easy for me to deconstruct, find the flaws in something, and use those flaws to push that thing away so that that thing can potentially hurt me or expose my failure, which is hurting me. And so for the first year, I distanced myself from you guys. I distanced myself from the faculty. And I called out every piece of bullshit that I saw everywhere, which in turn distanced even further with my ensemble, because they were there and they were excited to learn. And they were excited to be there and soak all this in, and this was their experience. And I was sitting here trashing it. And what made it worse was that I was good. Because then how do they refute me? If I sucked, it'd be easy to write me off. But I didn't. And so there was this troubling sensation that had to have crept over everybody. Of, oh, this has to have value, this has value. This has value. Chris is just jaded and angry. And then eventually, Chris is just jaded and angry won out. Because everybody could relax and have their own experience. And they did. But for a while there was energy floating my way because I was disrupting the flow of the kumbaya, of the experience. And that was my impulse, that was my reaction to feeling threatened and scared and small, insignificant, angry about my mother's condition, and unwilling to participate because I've been hurt so much in my life. And this program, on some unconscious level, I knew was going to ask me to lower my walls. And so I fought like a little honey badger. And I didn't trust anybody. No one in the faculty had earned my trust until I met Johnny. And while I feel like I could still spar with him, his knowledge surpasses mine infinitely. That's what he pointed out to me. He never told me that he was more talented than me, but he did openly tell me in front of everybody, he goes, I am more skilled than you. And he's right. And he's also far more knowledgeable than I am. I can spar with him all day in his office, point flaws in his arguments, and he can point flaws in mine. But that is pointless. And that's what he showed me. And so, when I finally found somebody who I knew I could trust to guide me, I fought him and I fought him and I fought him and I fought him and I fought him. And then when it was right, I gave in. Instead of walking out the door. And I needed it to be that way. Even at the cost of friendships. I needed it that way. Because I needed to see that the authority in the room wasn't going to hurt me. I needed to see that the person who was there was going to help me pick up the pieces after I shattered. That it was safe to feel the things that I was going to feel. People have othered me my whole life. My energy is too much. I'm a doses person. And he was unafraid. He has seen worse. He has been worse. And he told me so. I brought it to him. I was like, hey, why are you so obsessed with compassion and empathy and opening all of your capacities? And he said, because there are certain people on this planet who still to this day would think of me as an extremely difficult and narcissistic person. And I don't want to add to that list. And that was not even his main reason. There's several reasons why he delves into those things. But that was the reason he was highlighting for me and lifting out of the reasons so that he could give that to me for me to chew on.
What was the biggest lesson that you learned from Johnny? The first thing that comes to mind. It's scary.
I guess the first thing that comes to mind is I am enough. He kept repeating that to us. All of us. You are enough. Just say the lines. And I didn't believe any of that shit. I was like, oh yeah, right. Hocus pocus. Right. Great. Right on. What else you got in your book of magic? Like, you know?
Yeah.
And then when I was fighting him tooth and nail that one day, and
Not the day you flipped the table over, but another day.
No, fuck the day I flipped the table over. Here's the thing about flipping the table. Here's the thing about flipping the table.
I mean, I loved it.
Yeah, it's awesome. It's so fucking watchable. It's like, shut the fuck up with the danger shit. I was nowhere near anybody.
But to be fair, that was not during the scene. But it was good. There was stuff happening.
Yeah, it wasn't during the scene. It was during a take. He was like, all right, try it again. All right, try it again. It was one of those.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah. So.
But the day that he was making the descent.
Yeah, and I fought him tooth and nail, and I was unafraid to appear like an asshole. I was unafraid to appear like a total dick, or impossible to work with was what he called me. I was like, I know I'm difficult to work with. I guess everybody here is going to think I'm difficult to work with. That's fine. Like, there's other people in the sea. And he was just like, you're not difficult to work with. You're impossible to work with. And it bounced right off me like a fucking rubber bullet. And I was sitting here like, nope, that's not the right thing. You need to say something else. Nope, that's not it. Nope. And I could have kept going. I could have grabbed my shit and walked out of the room. But I saw something in his eyes. I saw that he wanted this for me. This wasn't about winning. And that's what I trusted. And so he had me read the text again, came in. And then when I was angry or sad, and I just gotten done talking about how my mother medicated me because she didn't know how to deal with me because I was ADHD and whatnot. He had me go on text after I came back in, and he was directing me while I was in the scene, and he told me to look up and expose my chest and my throat. And then he told me, all right, now go slightly to the left. And as soon as he did, I couldn't stop what was coming out. And it just erupted out of me, and it was huge, bigger than the room. And everybody in the room saw what was inside of me. And it angered some people. It hurt to watch. And people were stunned and mesmerized. The whole class, uniformly. There were people in our class who aren't particularly fond of me. And they had nothing but praise to say about it. And that's just purely from was it good or was it bad scale. What it was for me was the truest lesson of my ability to surrender to another. And that it can be safe. And that it doesn't have to, I don't have to guard. And ever since that day, I have worked so hard to look at my faults and accept them with grace and try to listen to another person for the sake of listening to them instead of listening to speak. And I'm trying to work on letting other people other me without getting offended. And I get that flash of fire and that anger and that sadness and that rejection and that abandonment that I feel when I'm othered. But then I just remember what my therapist and Anna tell me and what Johnny has told me. In so many words, he didn't really say this to me, but I could see it in his eyes. I am on a different playing field. It is not my fault. I am enough. And that if other people aren't on my playing field, and they resent me for that, that's on them. And I can be okay with them feeling uncomfortable. And I have to work on being okay with them feeling uncomfortable around me. It doesn't mean that there's something wrong with me. It means that they're in a state of comparison. Or they're in a state of fear from not understanding. And that's okay. And if I don't show them that they should feel bad, like guilty, shame, fear, anxiety, then it doesn't exacerbate the problem, the situation. And it has a more likely chance to level itself back out. If somebody bails on me when they said they're going to help me, if somebody is saying they're going to hang out and then backs out at the last minute, if somebody says, points out that I'm fucking up somehow, when I would be like, and like my hackles would go up before. Now, I'm like, nope. And I'll breathe it out and I'll be like, okay, what's going on with that person? And so I've learned to be less reactive. And I've learned that it's safe to surrender. And I've learned that I have a propensity, because of, ADHD or underlying latent narcissism. I don't know. I don't think it's narcissism, or I wouldn't be able to imagine how other people feel so accurately. I think that I guess what I'm trying to say is I think that it's okay. It's a hard journey. But I think that it's worth it, and I don't think that I felt that it was worth it before I came here. So that's kind of cool. So I let it go when things like that happen now. I try to. Other people are dealing with shit too. And that's new for me. That's not and I know it sounds something like something that somebody would inherently acquire before this age. But I didn't. And here we are. I'm learning it slowly.
So last thing.
Yeah.
First of all, I just feel like I'm seeing you.
Yeah.
We've been talking for a little bit, and I feel like I see you now in this last 5 minutes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I bet you say that to all the girls. I feel so seen and heard. Thank you.
No, but really, there's no need to do anything,
Mm.
And I see that just through you being in this moment. It's beautiful. You're a beautiful person.
Thank you.
Now, last thing.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not gonna end on a lovey note. But I kind of, it is.
Well, yeah. Let me check the timer on here. Okay, good. I have an hour and a half. I have a film thing that I.
Yeah, I have 15 minutes on here. But I'd like to. This will be the last thing.
Okay.
If you could give your former self some advice, what would it be?
Okay. Take the time. Take the time with the ones that you have and learn to love what you have instead of searching for more. More isn't the answer. It's the quality, not the quantity that counts. And the quantity doesn't dictate how stalwart, kind, awesome, funny, charismatic, talented, or emotionally sound you are. It's the quality of the people around you. I so often, still, and this is something I'm working through currently, I so often will desire deep, meaningful relationships with people. No bullshit relationships where we don't lie to each other. And there's no pretense. There's no placation. There's no white lies. It's all straightforward.
Out there.
Yeah, I have that with Cliff. And I have that with my buddy Joe. I don't have that with many people. And I want that. That's the only kind of friendship I want. All this surface level bullshit that exists with other people, it seems to be making everyone else content. And in fact, more often than not, people feel more comfortable in this surface level stuff. And I don't mean to call it bullshit because it does serve its purpose. It's a great working atmosphere. It's a great political atmosphere. It's a great artistic atmosphere. Being polite and being kind to each other for the sake of being polite and being kind and affording space. It's nice. I get it. But I in my friendships, I want something so much more. And I'm constantly running up against the wall because most people don't like that. It's too much for them. Especially with somebody like me, who's penetrating. I'm a mirror. I will ask questions without boundaries that some people would rather not answer. And I made a decision a long time ago to not sacrifice that part of myself for other people. And unfortunately, it doesn't have very many happy endings. Because a lot of people want to keep you out here instead of inside the pocket. And so I would tell my past self, and probably my present self, learn to be okay with that. It's okay if you don't get invited to board game nights. It's okay if you don't get invited to video game nights. It's okay if you don't get invited to kickbacks. It's okay if people don't necessarily want you around for the Super Bowl. It's okay if they feel like your energy is gonna sharpen the room and they'd rather not deal with that right now. It's okay if your misophonia gets in the way of people feeling like they can be close to you. Because that's really about their tolerance levels than it is about me. Don't dampen your light. Don't dampen your energy. Don't dampen anything for anyone. The ones who matter will find you. And I've got 2 or 3 of them. And the other ones, they'll be in your life for the amount of time that they're in your life, and then they'll drift into obscurity like everybody else. Don't try to force a fucking square peg into a round hole. And don't think that you're wrong for being a square peg.
Thank you, Chris.
Fuck you.